All right, good to see you, Warriors. Welcome back in. It is Tuesday night. We're going to have a lot more people jumping in, and so we are blessed. We've got Chris Terrell with us today, and if you haven't seen him, his TikTok is going pretty well. His podcast is great. He's done a lot. He's also had a journey where he's lost a lot of weight and turned into understanding more of the mindset behind it than belief systems behind. And I can't wait for him to be able to just unleash on what he's got for you guys. And Chris, this is a Q&A when you're done, right?
Yeah, and actually for me, I'm even for this one Q&A as we go. So,
Cool.
I don't know how y'all typically do it. I'm used to just a digital hand raising. Usually works
Hmm.
for me. I got the participants here, so I can see everybody.
Yeah, let me
Happy
co-host
to
you.
take questions because some of the stuff I'm gonna say, like you'll hear me say something, and you're like, well, man, he could have meant that one of four different ways. I mean, I'd rather you just interrupt me and ask like, hey, what did you mean by that? That way we're all on the same page as we're talking.
Sounds cool. Well done. So you see, there's a lot of versatility here. We're good to go. I'll tell you what, man. I can try and give you the intro and try and add value, but I think that your expertise speaks for itself. So you know what, brother? Take the floor. Rock this thing. You're
All
up.
right.
Go
Thanks,
for it.
man. I'm really excited to talk to y'all here. I do want to tell you a little about my backstory, so you just know who I am coming in. Well, I think actually, hold on, we'll just go right to it. I'm a visual guy, so I'm bringing all my visual setup here. So I'm going to tell you about my journey to the present. This was me right here, just 2018 in this photo. So this was me. Let me tell you, if that guy met me, he wouldn't know me. He wouldn't recognize me. And yet I would feel incredibly familiar to him. This guy saw the world really differently. And this guy had an interesting journey to get to this, to become this man here. To get to him, let me take you a little younger, like 5. From the time I was 5 to the time I was 15, I had moved 17 times. I was not in the military. I didn't, other than middle school, I didn't get to complete any segment of education in the same school. I had 2 high schools, multiple elementary schools. And, some of the moves were close enough that I was able to stay in the same school. Other moves took me to entirely different states and different parts of the country. As a young kid, that alone would have made me very isolated. Well, you add on top of that, I was raised in a very religious household. The religion of my youth, this is not to comment on religion at large or to about the specific religion at hand, just to give the backstory is all this is. I was raised in a Mormon household, and I was a very devout Mormon, which only further isolated me more from my peers, especially when I was living in the South, in the Bible Belt. So by the time I was 15, I felt pretty alone. But then in my own community, I felt even more alone, my religious community, because, well, as an LDS individual, the standard is high to what is to be good, not good. And on top of that, there's very outward appearances that you would do. And maintaining appearances is an aspect of it, even though it's a completely unspoken rule. And you are also had strict standards of conduct, including in your own mind. What kind of thoughts do you have? There are good thoughts and bad thoughts. And to take it further, I was at this time as a youth struggling to understand, why am I attracted to men and women? And yet my religion is telling me half of those thoughts are just bad and a sin to have. It's a sin just to have them. And so I'm now feeling even more isolated within my community. I just felt alone everywhere I went. And what I was doing is I was slowly putting on a different mask and persona that I wore in every different environment that I was in. And of course, I couldn't talk to anybody about it. Most of these things I was dealing with, nobody was talking about, nobody's asking. I wasn't raised in a world where I was told it's okay to feel it as deeply and as broadly. I was told to take my anger and not show it, to control it. You shouldn't get mad, I was told. You should have better control over yourself. And yet I always seem to struggle. It always seemed to be hard. All of this continued into many other parts of my life. I ended up staying into my father's business. Let me tell you, when you're the son of the owner of a business, it's a very isolating thing, even if you're good at your job. Just walking in the door instantly, I had to overcome every time. It's the owner's son. But that's why he got the job. And I know that because I've had people say it to my face. So it's not like it was theory. And so I always felt that I was never enough. No matter how good I got at my job, no matter what accomplishments I had, for some, it was never enough. Unfortunately, in that camp of some that it was never enough was me too. I didn't know that at the time. So let's come to this guy here. He now has come to a realization that he is just finally, for the first time, able to fully understand and articulate. And it is this, that I am flawed. And I can't seem to get myself to stop being flawed, despite my best efforts. Others don't seem to be flawed. This was the belief I had at the time. And unfortunately, the lesson that I was taking away from this was, I guess I should hide this truth from the world. This is where I was at this moment. I'm understanding I'm flawed, and there seems to be nothing I can do about it. That no matter what, there always seems to be another flaw. And others don't seem to exhibit it. They seem to have more control over themselves. It seems to be not as hard for them. I mean, obviously, I could have thought that they were just hiding it, but I didn't. I didn't want to believe that. So if you were to walk up and ask this guy, how you doing? He'd say something like, well, I'm fine. Nothing wrong with me. I'm totally cool. No problems whatsoever. The lesson that I was trying to teach myself continually was become good at my masks and hide the real me. Y'all, I was playing for keeps. I didn't want a single soul in the world to know about my masks. I didn't want a single person to know outside of my little worlds that I built, my different silos of my life. I didn't want them crossing over because they might not approve of other things. And so here's the accompanying thought that I also had to go along with it. It'll get better in the future someday. Somehow. Somewhen. Well, guess what? Guess what? It didn't. It did not. There I was. This is day one where I decided to change. This was my before picture that I went into a bathroom to get myself to take. I actually took my shirt off, but I couldn't get myself to leave it off. Man, I wish I could go back and tell that guy to just go ahead and take it off and take the photo. But he left it on. But I'm glad he did this photo at least. It was a good photo. David, I see you asked, were those masks for my own view of myself as well? Yes, very much so. I often wondered which one was the real me. Which one was actually me. I got so good at it, I wasn't sure who I was trying to be. Now, sometime before this part's not in this presentation. I don't normally talk about this part, but I want to include it here. Around my late 20s, I lost the religion of my youth. The thing that governed everything for me. My entire sense of morality stemmed from this. When I was LDS Mormon, I'd served a mission for 2 years. I ended up being called to serve in a place called Salt Lake City. Yes, the headquarters of Mormons. It's weird. It'd be like in Islam getting a mission call in Mecca. Like, I mean, I get it, right? Like, you're like, really? You do it? They're like, yeah, no, there's lots of people that don't believe. And I did. And I worked around a lot of polygamists. These are offshoots, fundamentalist Mormons that many years ago branched off and they have their own thing because Mormonism doesn't practice that anymore. And I remember there was one family I'd been working with, and I had a new person assigned to me. He was young, naive in this world. And he said, well, come on, isn't it obvious once you realize this whole plural marriage thing is wrong? It should be obvious. You just come be Mormon. And she looked at him, the wife, and said, you don't understand. When the people, your entire world around you has been telling you a thing is true and you find out it's not, you don't just question that. This goes all the way back to questioning the very existence of God because you learned all this from the same people. You don't know what to believe anymore. And I remembered this many years later as I lost the religion of my youth going, why do I tell the truth? Why do I even care? Why do I not steal? You know, these are obvious things. You think, well, because of this. I'm like, no, but for me, it was all rooted in Mormonism. I lost my entire core belief of right and wrong that had been given to me and all the supporting evidence that went with it. It all just cracked. And at this point in my life, I was still working through that. I had been out for many years, but the old conditioning was still very much there, and it was very troublesome sometimes to experience. I learned the first lesson. So I'm going to tell you the lesson and then how it was learned. Lesson 1, there is a future. There is a future. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, it's not like I was unaware of the fact that there's a future. Like I knew that part. I didn't understand that I had a future. And I didn't understand that futures become presents. Like the present moment. I didn't understand the value of time. You understand the value of time when your father sits in front of you and says, I'm going to die in a month and a half because of cancer. And there is nothing we can do about it. That's what happened as my dad sat the whole family around to tell us that he's about to die and that there is nothing we can do about it. I started to realize the future is coming. There's nothing I can do to stop it. This isn't a bad joke or a bad dream. This isn't that thing that happens to other people. It's happening to me. This is real. This is unstoppable. And I'm standing there looking at my dad. And I said, for the first time in my life, I now understand the value of a single second of time. Because now the hourglass of my dad's life, you know, the one that we all have as representing our life that has a note card taped in front of the top, his note card had fallen off and we saw how many grains of sand were left. And there weren't many, and it was running out fast. A single grain of sand all of a sudden had a lot of value. It had a lot of value. The doctors weren't wrong. In under 2 months, my father passed away. He was my mentor in business. He was my best friend at this point. He was honestly the only person that knew a lot about a lot of my silos. He didn't know about all of them, but he knew about most. The one person I felt I could be real with was just gone. And this led to my next lesson. Lesson number 2. There was a past. There was a past. And again, it's not like I didn't know intellectually that past things had happened. But I started to understand that the past is nothing but today's. It's just another today. But back then. And I I started realizing I regretted a lot of things about the past. There's a lot I look back on and go, I wish I would have. There was a lot of those. In fact, the more I started to look, the more I started to find. I started finding ones I had forgotten about. They were still there. So many regrets. But what hit me is I wasn't doing anything about them. Some of these regrets were stemming from things that are still happening right now. Relationships I'm in that I regret having got in. I'm still in the relationship. Jobs I regret that I didn't leave. I'm still in it. Things I regret I haven't done. I still haven't started. There was a lot of those. There was a lot that I realized it's done. It's over. There's nothing I can do about it. It's unchangeable. And I didn't know what to do with those. But in my journey, in my life, as I began to understand the notion of a future and a past, I began to understand the next lesson. And again, to clarify, I wasn't studying these. These were revelations as I went. This is the knowledge built upon the previous knowledge. I needed the things in the first lessons to understand the ones that came later. If I had jumped right to the end, I wouldn't have even understood it. But the third lesson I finally began to understand was that there is a present. There is a present. I started realizing I am in the good old days right now. Everyone, this moment, right now, wherever you're at, look around. Seriously, just look around. I'm watching. You're not looking around. Look around. Look around. Look at your surroundings. 20 years from now, you're going to look back in this moment and wish you could be right here again. And all you got to do is look around and take it in a little bit more. You start to realize how rich the present is. There's things there. And I would get glimpses of it. As I started to lose weight, as I started to do things I had never done before, as I started to go, I'm just going to start. I started to notice every now and then this present moment. Now, this journey of finding the present, it's interesting where it came from. When I found out my dad was going to die, I asked him if there was anything he had not shared with me that he was waiting to share with me until I was older, or maybe had gone through something. I had told him, even if you don't think I'll understand, could you tell me anyway? Because I told myself, I'm just going to listen. I just want to capture the words of what he tells me. I'll try to understand it as I go, but I need the words because I may never get them again. And he said he'd think about it. And then he called me a couple of weeks later and he said, I've been thinking about that question. He knew that there was a job, a position, a title that I had been working really hard for and I really, really wanted it. But he also knew I hadn't asked for it. So he said, if there's something you want, you've got to ask for it. And if you don't get it, you got to move on. You've got to stop waiting around. My father's dying piece of wisdom to me was to stop waiting around. And I wanted to honor that. And I stopped waiting around. I just started working on things. I just started because I realized in the past, the big flaw was I'd never started. I just kept thinking about it. I just kept someday maybe in. Never starting, never realizing that it is always the me of a present moment that starts. Future me can never start. Only now me can start. Well, when is now me gonna do it? As I continued to challenge this notion of saying self, no, don't ask future you to do it. Ask now you to do it. I would find these glimpses into the present. And as I went through this, I discovered something else, another lesson. Another lesson that if you had asked me, I would have told you I did it, but I didn't. I wasn't. I started learning that I've not been living in the present. I've not been living in it. I have been spending my days living in a distant future that has not happened and is not even guaranteed, because I can't tell the future as much as I'd like to wish I can, or reliving moments in the past, or alternative realities of the past, not even the actual past. I was addicted to thinking about things, thinking about the future, thinking about the past, agonizing about something I said. But I was doing all of that at the expense of the present moment. Well, no wonder I was always looking at the past, because I never saw it. It just whizzed right by. Think about how many of you resisted me telling you, just look around. You felt the resistance that the mind has to not, if you've not gotten yourself there to realize it doesn't want to come to the present and take everything in and just acknowledge the isness of life. And as I began to realize what I was doing, I couldn't help but ask myself, why? Why am I not living in the present? Because every glimpse I had of it was really nice. It felt really good. It felt really calm. Even when things weren't going well, it felt calm. I liked how I felt there, and I was always trying to get back to it. But it's like a ring of something over here. An alert from something over there. Somebody comes up and says something. A triggering thought happens in my mind saying, ooh, turn on my new podcast. Ooh, I wonder about my next show. How about this next meal? And I started to learn the next lessons. Moving to lesson 5. I've been living in the future through the past. I've been living in the future through my past. What I was doing was very insidious to myself, and I didn't even know it. When I was attempting to still believe the illusion that I somehow can tell the future, I can't. When I was still believing that, I was evaluating the future with my past. I would jump to the past, look at my past results, my past thoughts, my past failings, my past victories, and use that to determine what would happen in the future. If only I could go back in time and tell myself how much I was limiting myself, especially since I looked at my failures as a measurement of my potential and not my victories. Not realizing that it is in fact my successes that show my true potential, not my failings. And as I started to focus on looking at the future based on the now, I started to see that there was another lesson for me to learn. And that is, the past is in the present. The present moment is where the past is created. It is created right now. That moment where I asked you to look around the room is now in the past. You can't go back and ask yourself to look at the room again. What you saw is all you saw. Of course, many of you, I don't think any of you have changed locations. You could look around the room to gather what you missed. But what if you were in a once-in-a-lifetime place where you'll never get to come back? I realized I didn't know how to capture memories in the present so that I could secure them in my past. I didn't know that I need to actually stop and pause and acknowledge my victories and solidify it in the record of the past. I didn't know that I needed to write down everything so that I had a record of what happened. It's what I write down today that becomes my past, that then gets to become a letter to my future self. It was so important that I did these things. And it's so important that I recognized that the past is in the present, which then started to lead to lesson 7, which is I can live in the future through the present. Somewhere around this phase of understanding the past and the present, I started to have awareness in my mind be created to a few things that some part of me always knew, but never wanted to acknowledge. And one of them is this, and I like how actually Jim Carrey describes it. Our eyes are not only viewers, but they're also projectors, projecting a story on top of the scene playing out in front of you. I didn't realize that my past was not real. It was the real parts layered with my stories that I placed upon it. And I long ago forgot which was real and which was story. And now it's just all real. And I noticed that I could react emotionally in the present to something in the past. It's not happening. It hasn't happened for a long time. It's not real. And yet it sure feels real because I created it in my mind. And at first, it was easy to give myself permission to react emotionally in the moment because I was convinced the memory I was reliving was an accurate representation of what happened. But it wasn't. It was my reaction to what I think happened. Well, wait a minute. If this works one direction, it should work that way too. Because all I'm reacting to is imagination. Well, if I'm imagining some past and having a reaction, why don't I imagine some future and have a reaction? I started discovering that the future, I can live in it right now because it's all made up anyway. Once it's in the past, I don't remember it accurately, no matter how much I'd like to think I do. And I've come to see most of us don't. Most of us have no clue. We can't tell us what we did last week. We have recollections, but they're wrong. They're accurate-ish. Well, you know what? Sometimes changing 10% of a formula gets you an entirely different outcome. Just a little bit wrong can completely alter everything. This started leading to lesson number 8. The understanding, the awareness. I was finally able to say it as my own original thought and understanding. And it is that the past and the future both exist in the present. They exist here in my mind. What am I seeing around me? If I want a beautiful future, the best way to have it is to work on it in the present. And I started to discover I had a superpower that everybody has. I can alter how I see things in my mind on purpose. Because the truth is fuzzy and unprovable. And no matter what I'm doing, I'm operating off of assumptions to an extent. And the past is unchangeable. I can't change it. There's some things, though, that happened back there that I know were real. Like my dad dying. He's not here. That I didn't imagine that. That actually happened. I didn't imagine how I felt when I talked with him. I might have imagined what we said. I might not remember it exactly, but I remember how I felt. That was real. I remember how I felt when he was gone. That was real. But it also happened. And it never could have been any other way, except for how it was. And one day I realized I didn't want to be sad every time I thought about my dad anymore. Because I was kind of getting tired of being sad about it every time I thought about him. Because I realized every time I thought about him, I just thought about him not being here, instead of thinking he was here. I started realizing every time I thought about him, all I was thinking about was the things he didn't get to teach me, instead of thinking, but these are the things he did teach me. What a wonderful gift. I think a lot of people might say this, but I have evidence. I had a very unique father who was a very good one. And I didn't know. I thought everybody had it. I mean, I knew some had terrible dirtbag dads. I knew that. I didn't know about the whole gray area in between. I was fortunate that I had a dad that was aware enough. He was self-aware enough to know that he could give me a belief I could carry into adulthood. So he was careful. He still didn't get it right. But he was careful about what he conditioned me to think. And my siblings. We've talked about this. He knew that no matter what, he was going to manipulate us as we grew up. There's nothing to do about it. Parenting is manipulation. Because you can't let a child walk out into the street. You have to convince them not to do it. And when that child doesn't understand why they can't have a red glove and a blue glove on, you can't really reason with them sometimes. And so you have to manipulate them so that they don't kill themselves, because toddlers are suicidal and they don't even know it. And this child's mind is nothing but an open cup. My father knew that. And he knew what he put in there early on was going to stick and take hold and take root. And he knew that he couldn't tell us because we wouldn't understand. We were too young. We hadn't closed our mind off yet and fully started to develop our relationship with our conscious and subconscious and allow our belief systems to rule me. I hadn't got there yet when I was younger. He was aware of that. I thought all parents were aware of that until I lost my parent and started talking to others and realizing, oh no, I really lost something pretty amazing, and I didn't even realize how great it was until I started learning about what I had. And something clicked inside me. My dad had a gift. He had a very full funeral. People I'd never heard of came from all over the country to be at his funeral. People hadn't talked to him in 30, 40 years. They're saying, I used to work with your dad and he changed my life. I'm like, what? I've never heard of you. We'd find old letters that people had written to him thanking him. He was in commercial cleaning. He taught me to give value to a cleaner. He said every single person takes pride in their work, even the cleaner. So go give them their pride. Go tell them thank you. Go find something good they did and say, I want to show you. You did really good here. Thank you. I didn't know that that simple thing was something a lot of people don't get taught. Until I was gone. And every time I thought of him, I just got sad. And then I realized I had a choice. I just decided. Every time I think of my dad, I was using it to motivate me to lose weight. I was using it to motivate me to be better. I realized I had been using my dad's death to motivate me. I was using the sadness, though. And I started realizing, wait a minute, I think I can use the happiness. I'd gotten into marathon running at the time. I hadn't quite made it to ultra marathon training yet at this point. And I was discovering I could use the memory of my father to provide me motivation to keep running when I wanted to quit. And I was beginning to discover I could give it positive meaning. and I could focus on the positive. It was very, very invigorating. And I remembered something I kept hearing about my dad that even I knew. That whenever he talked to somebody, he recognized that everybody has a side of them that is really good, that is greater than the person standing in front of him. And he just chose to talk to that side of the person only and just ignore the side that was riddled with stinking thinking, as he called it. The side that doesn't believe in oneself. He just ignored that side. He'd give it as much attention as it was necessary to keep it out of the way. But otherwise, he only spoke to their highest and greatest version of a person. And I thought, I want to pass those lessons on. And it was coming to the anniversary of my father's passing. And I said, I'm going to do a 5-day seminar for free, and I'm going to give away the lessons my dad taught me. I'm just going to teach them. And just say, come. I bought the Zoom webinar thing so I could have as many people, and I got a big board up, and I just wrote down everything my dad had taught me I could think of. And I just filled out this paper, and I called my siblings, what are things dad taught you? And he'd tell me, and I'd write them on the board. And I'd call my other sibling, what did dad teach you? And they'd tell me, and I'd write them on the board. And I'd get them up, and I'm looking at them, and I'm like, what has changed my life? And I started circling them, and I'm putting them into days, and I'm like, all right, I learned these in this order, and well, I think I could teach this. I never have taught this before, but I think I can. And let me try to bundle it together. I've never done this before. Most people that had a Zoom meeting was like 12. It wasn't a lot. And I put it out there, and 500 people signed up, and it scared me so much I didn't promote it anymore. It scared me. It said 5 days, it ends on this. There was no pitch. There was no sales. I mean, I ended up adding one at the end, but I even regret that I did that. But the goal is just like, no, just do it. Just give it away. And I said, I want to change as many people's lives as I can. And I'm going to make sure they all know where this all came from. Where every little point came from. Yeah. I took his teachings and added a little of mine to it. But they're his. I left out the stuff that I came up without him. I left out the stuff that someone else taught me. I wanted it all to be traced. If a person said, this piece of advice you gave me from this day changed my life, I wanted them to be able to say, I need you to know where it came from. I was just the messenger. It came from him. You need to know that. And I told everybody what I was doing. I said, y'all, I'm going to try to change your life. And I'm doing it because every time I get to this time of year, that's all I want to be thinking about is his teachings changing someone's life because they changed mine. I was given a gift of a good father who taught me some really important things. And I got to give that gift to others freely. They just need it. You shouldn't have to pay for it. Some of these just truths that should be passed down from parent to child to parent to child that doesn't. And it's okay. It's okay that that doesn't happen. I can't do anything about it, but I can control what I do. And I can propagate it out. And I started turning the worst day of my life into one of the best things. My father dying changed my life. His shadow was gone, as it was supposed to always be. He was always meant to go before me, and I would never be ready, even when I was. And this led to lesson 9. Living in the now brings peace within. I was trying to be happy. I'd been trying to be happy for a long time. I was really bad at it. I mean, I was constantly getting sad or mad or frustrated or defiant or overjoyed or apathetic. You know, all the emotions. I just kept feeling them all. It's just like, I was creating dissatisfaction with where I was. I was always wanting to be over there. And then when it was here, it was great. I tried to enjoy it. But then when it left, started discovering happiness leaves for no damn good reason. But I also started to learn something. I'm a musician. I love music. There's a certain truth to music that's undeniable across all humans, all generations. Tell me, I'm going to do something very simple. Which one is more pleasing to the ear? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. What's more pleasant? The second one. It rises, it falls, it has crescendos and decrescendos, alternate paces. It's the alphabet. But the second is pleasing because of its dynamics. I love photography. I'm very intentional about this lighting. If I made my lighting completely covered in light, it would be a boring picture. I want the shadows. It adds dynamic to the image. The now, aka life, is kind of boring if it's all the same, even if it's happy. And I started realizing, I think it's time to stop pursuing happiness. And instead, it is time to pursue peace. I don't want to be happy. I enjoy being happy. It's a pleasurable experience. But what I really want is peace. I want to be in agony and be at peace with it. And I learned this while training for ultra marathons. If anybody's run a long distance, a marathon, especially in the woods, I'm a trail runner, you know, it hurts. It doesn't kind of hurt. It actually hurts. When you're on mile 32, and you've already climbed a 1,000-foot mountain and you've gone up and down another couple of 1,000 feet, everything hurts. I mean, it just hurts. I went to one of my mentors in running. I was like, my first 50 miler, you got any advice? He said, all right, you know the wall at mile 22. I was like, yeah. He goes, you know how it just starts hurting there? I'm like, yeah. He goes, that's not going to go away. Just settle in. That was his advice to me. He was not kidding. It just keeps hurting. It's just varying degrees of hurt. I am so at peace out there. I absolutely love running through the woods in just so much pain. Because when I feel the pain and everything is making me want to quit, my entire body is screaming, if you just slow down just a little bit, I'll stop making it hurt. I'll stop. You're dying right now. You feel that in your stomach? Yeah, you are about to throw up all over the place. You want to throw up while you're running? And it's just screaming at you. Because I know I just got to wait you out. I just got to wait you out. Because I know it's on the other side of this pain. And it is amazing how it feels. So I'm just going to wait. Because I discovered if I stay at peace in the pain, I don't quit. When I get into a little pity party for myself, I quit. Because every time I have a pity party for myself, I quit. It was a pattern. It was pretty dependable. My ultra marathon training forced me to realize that the now brings me peace. Which has now led me to lesson 10 that I am trying to learn. This is my today. How do I stay in the now? How do I stay present? And I need to answer that because I know when I do, on the other side of that is lesson 11, which has yet to be discovered. Now, in all this, though, there's a meta lesson. Some of you might have noticed the slides progressively got lighter. You will see all those shades represented in this image, from black to light. If you look in the full screen behind me, oops, wrong one, right there, the light and the dark. Somewhere on this journey, I came back to my flaws. Those flaws in the beginning. They were still there. Those things about me that I wished were different. Some I got rid of, only to find something else behind it. Dang it. It's like trying to scoop water out of the ocean. It's just ridiculous. You just don't seem to get anywhere. And that's where I started to understand the duality of humans. That I possess within me the capacity for incredible self-destruction, down to outright oblivion for myself. But I equally possess the ability for creation, opposition in all things, up has down. I saw somebody put it in the chat earlier, yin and yang, light and dark. And I discovered I don't need to tame the other side of me. I just need to understand it and learn to live in harmony with it and let it live in harmony with my surroundings. I realized I would rather be capable of doing terrible things in the defense of those I love and then not need to use it. My now fiance was a little shocked at something I did when we first started dating because I wanted to change who I was. I didn't like how I was living. I was too conflict avoidant. Unfortunately, I was conflict avoidant even when I shouldn't be. And I really want to be a nice person. I want people to look at Chris and say, he's a nice guy. He treated me right. He saw the good in me. But I also want people to look at Chris Terrell and know he's a man of principles. And he'll respect you, and he'll respect your principles, but he's going to want that same respect back. And if it's not given back, I'm going to say something. And my girlfriend at the time, now fiance, I'm just going to say girlfriend, she texted or called me and said, this guy at the security guard at the library, he was following me. I was like, what do you mean he was following you? Like, he's a security guard. She's like, no, he was following me around the library. And it's like, I even went to completely other parts of the library away, and he was all of a sudden over there. I was like, all right, it's probably nothing, just, but if it does it again, say something. Like, because she goes to the library all the time. There's a new security guard. I'm like, just go talk to the people at the library if it happens again. Well, it happened again. And so she calls me. She goes, I just left the library. It's like, well, what happened? Did he do it again? She goes, yeah. And I went to them and I talked to them and they brought him in and because it said, and I was like, wait, what did he do? Like before he did it, like, what did he do? She goes, he took my picture even. I was like, really? He goes, yeah, he came and held it around the thing and I saw him take my picture. And I even went up and said, did you just take my picture? He's like, no, I didn't do that. And that's when I went and talked to them. And, and he's like, look, I could take pictures of whatever I want. I could walk around and well, did they ask him to see his phone? He goes, yeah, but he wouldn't show it to him. I'm like, all right, this is weird. And so I was like, okay, this isn't right at all. She now left the library. She was completely worked up. And everything inside of me was mad. My partner was just made to feel uncomfortable. And she didn't do anything for that. It had been twice. And I wanted to cause a scene. But I was like, don't do that. Everything inside of me went, nope, you run away from conflict. You don't need to cause it. And I'm like, no. I know my girlfriend, she would not have pushed and meant and said what needed to be said to ensure this doesn't happen again. Because she's a very kind and gentle individual. And she would just want to get out of there. I know enough about some of her past that she's just going to want to get out of there. So I said, you know what? We'll make this real simple. I went to the library. I told her I was going to do this. So just say, no, this will not happen again. I wrote a note and I said, it's come to my attention. You made my fiance or girlfriend very uncomfortable. I understand it might be a complete and total misunderstanding. Just understand, if it does happen again, I will cause a very big scene. And I handed it. And I just put, thank you. I appreciate it. And I put my name in a smiley face. So I found the guy. I went and looked at him. And I thought, all right, first I need to see, does this guy walk around? And I watched him for a while. He didn't walk around. He kept his butt parked on a chair the whole time. I'm like, okay. And I'd seen other security guards. I had not seen them walk around much either. So I'm like, that's enough for me. So I walk over, hand him the note, and I just stand there. Everything inside of me is like, run away. You don't need to cause conflict. This is bad. Don't defend. Just leave. It'll get better. And I'm like, no. You're just going to stand here and feel this. This is super uncomfortable. Everything about this is unpleasant. Smile. So I just stand there and I'm just smiling. And he looks up and I'm like, thank you. And I turn around and walk away. And he's like, no, we need to talk. I'm like, look, we don't need to talk. It's okay. I'm not saying you're lying. Just don't make her uncomfortable. That's all I'm saying. Just don't make her uncomfortable. No. And he followed me out. I was like, look, if you're not doing anything wrong, this is going to be like the easiest thing ever. It's not a problem. Never had a problem again. Didn't have a problem a single time after that. One time she was running and some two teenage boys started shouting things at her to make her feel uncomfortable. And I was running and I ran up to her and she's like, oh yeah, those guys back there, they were like doing it. I was like, what? She's like, yeah. I'm like, hold on. It's like, what are you talking about? And I just, by the time she realized what happened, I'd already turned around and I'm sprinting back. And I worked right up to those guys and I said, gentlemen, it's come to my attention that you were saying things that made my girlfriend very uncomfortable. I want you to know that is not appropriate nor the right way to do that to, especially to somebody walking down the street. Please don't ever do that again. Have a nice day. And they're like, what? And I'm already gone. I started learning I can use that side of me to go enforce a proper boundary. I can use the dark side of me and let it have its voice, but through the good side. Let both sides come to bear. And now what I've created is an environment where my now fiance feels safe. She knows that if something threatens, I'm going to do what's required. I'm not going to overreact, but I'm not going to underreact either. I'm going to protect whatever it takes. And I started discovering that it's in the present moment where I can bring the two sides of myself together. It's where all of me gets to exist. My fear, my anger, my happiness, my ambitions, everything. They're all there in the present. And if I want, I can just go there at any time. And it is amazing how hard it is to get myself there sometimes. Me and my girlfriend having a disagreement, triggering my emotions. Struggling with a client, feeling that. Someone cutting me off in traffic. Grief showing its face because it doesn't ever check in with me. It always just shows up when it wants to. How rude of it. But I find that in the present, I can get through anything. Because in the present, there's usually not very much wrong. Usually the present is very handleable. It's very doable. And so that's where I'm at. Trying to learn how to be in the present. Rick, that's all I got.
Pretty awesome, bro. Well done, man.